you might think, you know what, if this happens, if X happens, I gotta go. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to work it through with you. I just got to leave.
Cheating is a tricky one for me
Okay.
because I would say that yes, it's a deal breaker if because like I think once the trust is broken, it's like then you're always like on edge and you think that that person is constantly doing something when they're out and you can't trust them. But
There's things that when you look at it, like men and women may carry ourselves differently because the expectations are different. Women holding themselves true and not getting involved with the man in that way, I think it looks different from a man's perspective, because for a man to be physically intimate with a woman does not necessarily require emotional connection. Now, and again, continuing talking about where we're at right now, I want to throw this scenario out to you because I've been thinking about this over the past couple weeks, and I just wanted to hear your insight or your perspective on it.
Mhm.
Do you think there is a particular situation or circumstance that you might find yourself in? Like, let's say if you were dating somebody that you might think, you know what, if this happens, if X happens, I gotta go. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to work it through with you. I just got to leave. Do you have any scenario like that you could share with us?
yes, but I will say that these are scenarios that like because remember we talked about me struggling with actually sticking to my boundaries and
Mhm.
sticking with like what are deal breakers for me.
Yep.
I would say honestly like being physically abusive, right? Like I don't at the moment that you put your hands on me, like I should be out the door.
Fair.
Cheating is a tricky one for me
Okay.
because I would say that yes, it's a deal breaker if you show that you're not gonna. I think to be honest, like, well, I mean, it's hard because like I think once the trust is broken, it's like then you're always like on edge and you think that that person is constantly doing something when they're out and you can't trust them. But like part of me wants to say like I guess maybe if something happened and they had some sort of like I don't know if I would leave right away. And I
Can
don't know if that's bad.
I don't think it's bad necessarily. Can I ask you a question before you continue to
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
to kind of follow up on that? How would you define cheating?
My thought is like, okay, let's say you like kiss somebody else. That to me is like rough to get over, but I think you could get over it. I think you could move past that. Sleeping with somebody else is kind of like up in the air, right? It depends on the relationship. Some people I think can move past it. I think others can't. Do I think that I can? Maybe. Because I don't know. I think I think I've been in situations where this has happened and I have stood in it. So I don't want to sound like hypocritical and say that like I would leave if I know deep down that I probably wouldn't right away and it would take me time. I'm also the kind of person that like I like to see things through for as long as I can and sometimes to a fault. But like I don't know. I try not to think like, oh, once I'm with somebody, like I don't want there to be these things where it's like I'm just gonna walk out on you and there's like I want to work on things. I want to try to make
Right.
things work. Like I would love to. And I don't want to think like I've already invested time and energy into this person and I love this person. So like let's see if we can make this work. But there are certain things, right, where you can't just sit and take anything. How much will you take? And everybody has like a certain like limit and like a threshold to like how much you're willing to take. And like to be honest, I feel like I can't even really speak to that unless like I'm in this situation because I think everything there's circumstances for everything, and so I think like it's also very circumstantial.
Sure.
But yeah, I hope that kind of vaguely like answers the question.
No. That's pretty good detail. Let's make sure I captured a lot of it, and see if there's anything else that we can extract from that.
Yeah.
So you mentioned physical abuse. I think that's pretty straightforward. Men, we shouldn't be putting our hands on women. Women, we shouldn't be putting hands on men.
Yeah.
You said cheating. Obviously, I asked you to define that because I think people have different definitions. And also men and women, I think, look at it differently. Because I think, and again, I know we're going to make some generalizations. I'm not saying this applies to every single person, but I think for a lot of us, these things can be true. I think for men in the physical sense, the physical connection, that's probably the most typical way that we may cheat on a woman. But I don't think it's necessarily because we have emotional connections, unlike women in a lot of cases where if women tend to engage in those type of actions, it is emotional connection. That's why they're allowing themselves to do it. Versus for men, it can very much be, I did it, I'm moving on, I'm back with my lady, I'm not even thinking about that person. It just happened. So I think, it, again, there's nuance. So we might look at them differently. So I can totally respect that you might not necessarily put as much weight on it and might say, I am willing to work on it. It just depends on what happened. And let's see maybe how he responds due to it.
Do you think that women can also feel that way? Like, let's say, like,
about what?
Because you say, like, typically men, it's like they can be physical and it doesn't mean anything, and like women, it's typically emotional. Typically means more if you're physical with somebody. Like, what if it doesn't? Like, are there certain? Do you believe that there are like certain cases in which it's not emotional and women can get over it the same way, or do you think like men and women are just like wired differently?
I think it could be possible for some. But if I had to like extrapolate it on a like a macro level scale, I would say I think more often than not, more women would not choose willingly, choose to be promiscuous. They would choose to be with intimate, like only with their partner. When we say intimate, it could be kissing, holding hands, talking about your deepest, darkest secrets or your hopes, your dreams, including sex. I think more often than not, and again, you can clarify if you would like to, I think more women would prefer to have that partner and be with that partner as opposed to for an extended period of time, like months and months, even years, have a relationship, can sleep with somebody else and not let it affect their relationship with their guy. You can tell me if you feel differently.
No, I agree with you. So you think that there are men who cheat and it's purely physical and it doesn't affect the love that they have for their significant other, and it's literally just physical?
Yeah. I think there's a lot of cases, I'm not saying every person, but I have seen many cases where a man doesn't necessarily hold that woman, and this might be hard to hear for some people, but I don't think that man holds that woman in the highest regard. And I think we can say that because we can go back to situationships, right? That conversation. Because when we're being intentional, if a man's being intentional and he's telling you, hey, I really want you, I really want to build a family with you, I want that. He's not typically saying that to a bunch of people. I'm not saying no man says that, right? There's con artists out there who, that's their finesse game. I'm not going to say that doesn't happen, but I'm saying we're talking about the vast majority. Most men are not con artists. They're not going to keep saying that statement over and over again, because when we get emotionally invested, in my experience, it takes a lot. Not because it takes less for women, but because men are so like far behind emotionally. When we finally get up the courage and the intention to want to share that, like, we're not just doing that for anybody. When we say that to you, we're probably not saying that to this other person over here. So they have a different role. And their role is not conflated with your role, if that makes sense. Their role may be like they're just providing physical pleasure for that particular moment in time, but they don't want to necessarily build a family with them. They don't want them to have their last name. They don't want to have children with them. They don't want to provide a home for them. They don't want to give them access to their retirement accounts. They don't want to put them on the life insurance policy. So there's things that when you look at it, like, men and women may carry ourselves differently because the expectations are different. Women holding themselves true and not getting involved with the man in that way, I think it looks different from a man's perspective, because for a man to be physically intimate with a woman does not necessarily require emotional connection. It can seemingly be mindless. And again, that might be hard for some ladies to hear, but it can be mindless. It's literally just for that physical intimate moment, and that's it. Versus to sit down and have your lady know the things about you that nobody else knows, to talk about the real hopes and dreams for the future, and to build and structure the family the way you two want to do. Not advocating infidelity, to be clear, but it just looks different because expectations are different, because men and women are different. But ultimately, these things would need to be discussed, right? We would need to want to talk these things through to understand, how do you feel about these things? This is how I feel about these things, and try to find a meeting of the minds, right? Everything's about compromise when it comes to relationships. So hopefully that kind of built on what you were saying.
It does, yeah.
And also, I love the question that you asked, because I think that that's also really important. You said, how much will you take? I think it's a beautiful question, because if you think about it, why would I leave? Because maybe I'm hitting my breaking point, because you were you did have an infidelity moment with somebody, and I don't have a history with that, so I don't know if I can override it. I don't know if I can overcome it, right?
Mhm.
I do believe it is possible, not always going to happen, but it is possible to repair damage.
Mhm.
I do believe it is possible, but it depends on both parties. Let me paint a scenario so hopefully you and the audience can all understand. So let's say, again, we'll just use me and you for the example. So we're in a relationship, I cheat on you, right? One time. And I know that that person didn't mean anything significant to me. I very much still want my family. I just saw that opportunity, whatever. I initiated, they initiated, doesn't matter. It happened, but I have zero intention on pursuing them. It was just for that moment, right? So you were wronged. To me, from a clinical standpoint, my first thought would be, so Sydney is going to be driving the conversation in terms of what does she need to see, to hear, to eventually feel that confidence is being restored. Because when I talk about trust, I talk about confidence. To me, trust is just confidence. I have the confidence that when you say this, that you're doing it. That when you say you're here, you're actually there. To me, trust is just confidence.
Yeah.
So you can build confidence. But what that means is, so Sydney's then setting the terms. This is what I need to see. This is what I need to feel. This is what I need to hear. And you got to be consistent. And it might take a really long time. And you got to be down for that journey, meaning me.
Yeah.
I have to sign up for that. Say, you know what?
Right.
I want you. I want this. I made that mistake. And if you need me to do these things, I will do them. And then you might say, okay, sounds good, but talk is cheap. Show me. And then for however long that period of time is where I'm working on it, maybe I'm going to therapy, maybe you're going to therapy, maybe we're going to therapy together. We start working through it time after time after time. I do believe over time, if I'm being consistent, eventually it's never going to wipe it away, to be clear. We talked about pain. I think pain is painful memories are helpful to force us to grow, like I said earlier. But can I be consistent enough that you start to find confidence in what I say again? I think, yes, it is possible.
Yeah.
Does that example make sense?
Yeah. And I honestly, I agree with it.
Okay. So for those out there, like, hopefully that is a useful example that you might think about. So the purpose is not to sell you on infidelity and everything can be repaired. No, the point is you got to have really honest discussions. You got to be real. This happened because, try not to go too deep into a role play, but I love role playing. But it's kind of like, so I didn't feel desired. That could be an example. I didn't feel desired by you. We've been together for 2 years, and I just, I kind of noticed over the last few months, it felt like you didn't really want to be close to me. If I tried to hold your hand, you kind of pulled away. I always had to initiate sexual contact, and oftentimes it felt like you were pulling away and you didn't really want to engage with me. And honestly, this girl that I met, like, she just gave me some attention, and I think I was just responding to it because I was feeling kind of malnourished, so to speak, from you. And I'm not trying to blame you. I'm just trying to give you insight. Like, this is what I think led to me making that decision.
I think that's a very real scenario. I think that like happens all the time. I honestly think that that's what happened with me. But I mean, yeah. And like I said, I guess another like question that I kind of want to pose to you is like,
sure.
And then with the other person, right? The other party, the person who got cheated on, like, what are some realistic expectations to set on the person who cheated? Like, how do you, because, right, like I know everybody's answers are going to be different because it would vary from person to person, but what do you think, like, makes sense, I guess?
For the expectations that the person who did the cheating should think they're going to be held to moving forward.
Yeah, or like, yeah, what are fair expectations of the person who was cheated on to have, kind of.
Okay. I mean, I think if you're the one that did the wrong, to me, you want the relationship. This is the key part. Okay. You still got to want the relationship.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
the whole example it was predicated on that idea. Because if you don't want to be there, then you have no leverage. So
yeah, yeah,
the relationship is pretty much done.
yeah,
But I did it. I still want you. I still want us. I still want what we've built.
yeah,
Right. I'm at the mercy of you in the sense of what you feel that you need to see from me for an extended period of time. Extended period of time could be years, guys, ladies. It could be years. I have to be willing to write that because I'm the one that violated it.
Mm.
So I can't look at you and say, damn, Sydney, that's so long. I can say that, like, that's my initial reaction, but I also have to be like, you know what? But she didn't ask to be put in a situation. He didn't ask to be put in this situation. So I got to consider, talk about empathy. I got to consider how that made them feel.
Right.
And they got to work on their stuff now. So I definitely got to work on me to help uplift and support them so that they can at some point find the confidence and the trust in me again.
Mm.
Right. So I think you're at the mercy of that person in terms of if they're acting in good faith to have these types of discussions. Good faith meaning I'm not trying to control your life now and say you got to do this, and this, and if you don't do it, like I'm gonna walk away every day because that's just gonna create like a environment and culture of fear and like paranoia.
Right.
That's not healthy. But again, a good faith would be. So I think, to give an example, I think you need to go to therapy. Why? Because clearly something is missing and was missing from your perspective in our relationship, but you didn't tell me. And I can't address anything if you don't tell me what the issue is. I'm not a mind reader. So if you don't find a way to learn how to express yourself, there's no way we can make this work because I'm going to just be grasping at straws. Mm-hmm. And then you can't really tell me if it's right or wrong because you don't take the time to learn to express what you need and how you think. Mm-hmm. You have to be willing to do that. Mm-hmm. So that to me would be my starting point. And then maybe we get to the point where we say, hey, the other person, they might decide to do some therapy too, to try to figure out and process how they are receiving all of that information. How are their feelings now, knowing that that trust was violated, right? And then hopefully building us up to the point where we're both now working together with a professional. Ideally, if you're working with the same person, I think that's great because then the flow of information will just be much smoother.
Right.
But then you have the opportunity to actually, okay, let's come together. Let's have this meeting of the minds and start learning healthier communication, being more emotionally vulnerable and available to one another. Sometimes that's why people, look outside the relationship because again, we kind of feel like we're missing something. Mm-hmm. So it is nuanced, like you said. It's not always very cut and dry. You can't say, oh, if you do this and that's it. Because that's just kind of like dangling this carrot in front of this person and making them feel like if they ever make a misstep, hey, that's it. You can feel that way, but then that's almost like holding the person hostage. And that's not an honest relationship. That's not acting in good faith. So I think it's always going to come down to each person being very transparent about what they need. The person who was wronged gets to set the pace, right? Because we're talking about feelings. To develop confidence is a feeling. It's not going to happen quickly. And I won't know when you feel confident in me until you tell me. Mm-hmm. There might be some signs like, oh, I went to the store and she used to have me check in with her every time I left the house. And now she doesn't care. Mm-hmm. Maybe she's feeling more confident in me. Mm-hmm. Okay. But we should still be having lots of conversations. I would say at least once a week to really dive into the weeds about how each other feels, to make sure that we're being as clear as we can, that I really want to be here and I'm willing to do what is necessary to make you and help you develop that confidence in me again.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, that answers the question.
Very long-winded answer, but it takes breaking it down, in that way to really, because it's a very touchy subject and it's a very difficult subject for a lot of folks that many of us go through to figure out how to deal with.
Yeah. And like I said, and like you said, I think it varies from relationship to relationship.
Mhm.
But I think you putting it like it really at the discretion of that person, bottom line. Like,
Oh yeah.
like
If-
there's no
If they even want to give you the chance.
Right, exactly.
Like we said, the question was, it might be a thing where you're like, hey, I won't give you a chance.
Right.
We're walking away now.
Right.
My whole point was not that that's wrong, because we're allowed to feel that way. My whole point was just that sometimes we're walking away from situations that we don't necessarily have to.
Yeah.
If we communicated more, there's a greater opportunity for us to get on the same page and right and remedy that issue.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to keep being present, but the fact that we keep avoiding and not talking about it because we're uncomfortable or whatever, then it kind of holds power over us. It's like the boogeyman in the closet. We won't talk about it, so then we never deal with it. So then we keep dealing with all the consequences of not talking about it. So, but a very good way for you to break that down. I think that was very well said. And I think ultimately that will be good for us to be considerate of, for those of us out there that have either been in that situation or we're concerned about being in that situation. I think you have to be at the mercy of that person who was wrong. They're going to set the tone. And if we want them and we want that situation, we got to be willing to do the work.
Right.
But